Hi, everyone, and welcome once again to Stakeholders Podcast in conjunction with Boehringer Ingelheim. Joined by the normal team today, and in no particular order, but firstly, Shona Timothy, veterinary lead specialist from Boehringer Ingelheim, James Herrick, Farmer's Guardian Beef Farm of the Year 2004. He didn't win it last year, but then he didn't apply. Ben Harmon, our chair, and he's also sits on the Beef and Lamb Council for AHDB. He's the chairman of checks and does some other things. And our very special guest today is Hugh Brown, CEO of Melton Mowbray Market. So we'll hear from all the other folks in a minute, but firstly, Shona, as part of our normal routine, what can you tell us about Bluetongue?
I think it's all gone a bit quiet, Neil, in one sense, in that there's maybe not the conversations taking place around it that there were this time last year and during the fly season last year. But if you dig a little bit deeper, there is a lot happening. So there are cases cropping up all the time. I think probably largely evidence of last year's infection. You know, it's widely accepted those infections are likely to overwinter. We're seeing a lot of the reproductive effects of Bluetongue around the place, abortions in spring calving herds. And we've seen in the last few months the spread of the virus into the Isle of Man and across to the island of Ireland as well, where again they're picking up new evidence of infection all the time. So I think we're still kind of sitting on a bit of a precipice, really, where the virus is definitely still knocking around, and we need to be very cautious that it could have a major impact again this coming season.
So on that, folks, I'm going to read out some stuff. This is all publicly available information from gov.uk, where they update the website with positive test results. I'd not looked at this for a few days, and I can honestly say it scared the living daylights out of me. And I've been a big advocate for trying to make people aware of what we saw on the eastern side of the country last year. Calf losses, abortions, early onset abortion, dummy calves, non-viable calves. So I'm just going to go through a few of these. 4th of February, aborted bovine fetus with brain malformation in Devon. 5th of February, 2 cows tested in Staffordshire following a series of abortions in the herd. 6th of February, 2 cows in Kent tested privately following several calves in the herd born with lack of coordination and inability to suck. That would be those dummy calf scenarios we're seeing. 1 aborted bovine fetus with brain malformation in Cumbria. 9th of February, 1 cow tested positive following birth of an abnormal calf in Oxfordshire. And how's about this? 1 aborted bovine calf tested following finding of abnormal brain development at a post-mortem examination in Shropshire, following approximately 20 other abortions in the herd. The solution to this would have been vaccination in the spring of last year. And the prevention for this is vaccination now to prevent this happening again next year. As I say, it's all available there, and every one of those, Shona, as you alluded to, it's all aborted calves and cows with abortions and non-viable calves, and it goes across the whole country from Kent, Essex, Staffordshire, Cheshire, Cumbria, down into Cornwall, Somerset, and Devon. So the disease was clearly far more widespread last year than what was ever picked up, and we still know that's massively underreported. So one of our takeaways this week is going to be we're going to try and collate a bunch of people to spread this information a bit more openly to the farming industry, to make people aware and try and make sure we get a better uptake of vaccination this spring.
I think that's a really important message, because we can't protect pregnancies of cows that have already become infected, but we can make sure we have protection in place before the next pregnancy and before the high risk period. Now there's still time. So it really is a good time to kind of consider what's happened on these herds, and for farmers to put their own protection in place for their own herds this coming year.
And Shona, where are we with VMD and full technical document and full marketing authorization for Bull Tavo 3?
Yeah, you're not going to be surprised at my answer, Neil. It's still underway, but I think there's a couple of aspects to that. We know for the vast majority of farmers in the UK, it'll be the first time they vaccinate this year. So actually, revaccination's not an issue for them because they didn't vaccinate last year. But for those farmers that are revaccinating, I guess, similar to what I've said on previous episodes, we do have data we can discuss with their vets, so we can help them make an informed choice. But because it's not on the SPC yet, we're limited in what we can say in kind of public fora ultimately.
Yeah. So I was just going to come back to something that James has said in the past, which is, oh my gosh, what a cheap insurance policy this is. And you don't have to look at the poor farmer who lost 20 odd calves. You only have to lose one calf to pay for a bottle of this. Well, and you and much more. I mean, the cost of one lost calf and the ongoing cost of that cow probably getting mastitis and having a more difficult calving next year and all that kind of stuff. It's cheap. So I'm looking forward to doing mine it's actually on my wall on the 26th of March. All my cattle will be done again. And I just can't think why anyone wouldn't do it. I've had a few phone calls and WhatsApps this week from various farmers, actually some of them sheep farmers. And I've got to say, I really do not consider myself to be any kind of a sheep expert, but just people asking, what do you think? Should we be doing this? Hell yeah. Speak to your vet. I'm not an expert, but of course you should be doing it.
Shall I put my tuppence worth in about Bluetongue then at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. But before you say that, Hugh,
Yeah.
I will make a point that I keep making. The biggest threat to livestock numbers in the UK last year, this year, and next year is Bluetongue disease. And that list, and that wasn't the whole list. Everything through February is calf losses on farms that have reported them, and there'll be multitudes of farms that haven't reported them. It's got the potential to take double-digit percentages off saleable cattle this year and next.
So thanks for that. And I wouldn't dispute that. You're far more on top of the data than I am on it. I think where we are on record of saying and doing is that the restrictions that were put in place by APHA and the ministry to try to prevent the spread of Bluetongue, the attempt to stop it cost a lot more than the risk of it going faster than it actually did. The amount of effort APHA had to put into it, the cost to our farmers, to us and other markets. We lost our two biggest buyers, sheep buyers. This is overnight when we went into the zone, and it impacted our cattle buyers a lot as well. The efforts we had to go to, our customers had to go to, the changing every couple of weeks on a Friday night was incredibly expensive and, in my view, our view, overkill. When it comes to vaccination, now we have an endemic disease that we always were going to get sooner or later. I think what we find is there isn't a lot of noise from the commercial producers, but from the pedigree producers, absolutely. That's where the value is so much greater, and they're on it. If there is value to be gained, especially from a lot more of the commercial cattle producers in vaccinating, I'd say speak to them. They're there to be spoken to. They're there to be educated. Maybe I can persuade Sinead to put an advert in our market report. It's a way of reaching the farmers on the ground in a way that HDB and the like cannot do because they don't know who they are still. And come to Beef Expo, because that will be a huge gathering of regional and national farmers, and speak to them about the benefits of it, because certainly, as I say, what we're seeing is now it is endemic. It always was going to be endemic. Why didn't we just hurry up that process and save a lot of cost and trouble? The commercial guys need to be persuaded of the benefits of vaccination.
So can I jump in there, Neil, on that? Because I think it's relevant. Charlotte has pointed out before that where countries jumped into vaccination very, very quickly and wholeheartedly, they are now got free. They're in a free status. Is that right? Can you put that in better words for me, Charlotte?
Yeah, so legally, I don't think any of them are returned to free status, but from a disease incidence perspective, where they've got in early and they've had a high level of vaccination, it has blocked transmission of disease. It has prevented clinical cases and kind of pretty much totally mitigated the kind of effects that we're talking about.
So I'm not going to knock AFA for doing what they thought was right at the time, but actually, with the benefit of hindsight, what would have been right was to encourage everybody to jump on this early, and we could be best part through it by now.
So there's a number of things there that we couldn't do, and one is we couldn't vaccinate when we didn't have vaccine, and that was the reason the APHA put the brake in the system to try and buy time to get vaccine. There wasn't vaccine available in the back end of 24. There wasn't
Right.
vaccine available till late spring 25. And that's why they tried to slow down the spread of the disease, which they can argue in evidence that they really did. Except, Hugh, your points on sheep. We should have told you at the start of the podcast you're not allowed to mention sheep. So yeah, we'll let you mention. You've mentioned them now, so it doesn't really matter. But I think, and I know it was difficult, and we can look at the Netherlands and Belgium with a little bit of envy because they don't have devolution either, and they don't have these borders. You can see that livestock go across in abundance, having been part of the core group and being one that actually tried to keep the brakes in place for longer till we were more ready in case we would see what we are now seeing. I think they did the best they could with the tools they had at the time. We didn't, I'm sure that you'll remember, it was late spring last year before we had vaccine in abundance to be
Yeah.
able
Oh,
to,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, to be able to vaccinate. And I would agree that, and here's me mentioning sheep now, some sheep producers had difficulties because the way that sheep move, but it's cattle that spread the disease. And oddly, maybe contrary to what we saw in 2007-8 with Bluetongue, it's cattle that's being impacted this time, and in particular, its fertility. And it's the numbers thing that worries me. I mean, the scale of that losses just on those cases that have been reported. If you multiply that by the population of the beef and dairy herd in the UK, the end of this year, or it's into 27, we start seeing a shortage of cattle, and then into further into 28. And unfortunately, when we've got a decrease in herd, everyone's going to say, "Oh, but people were cutting back in numbers anyway." And the real truth behind it might be hard to pick out. So, James, you vaccinated last year. I assume you're all in place to do it again.
Yeah, we bought the cattle in we started winter today. So we bought cattle in, we start calving in 2 weeks, and then I'll go through them next week, trim all my cattle ear tags out, trim all my tails, and I'm going to vaccinate then as well, give them the booster. So get it done before we start calving, then everything can go back out in the spring and job done.
Yeah. So if there's nothing else on Bluetongue, just a note to our listeners and viewers that keep an eye out. We're going to do a couple of things again. We've got a brainwave that we can't tell you because if it doesn't work, we won't have failed. But if it works, we'll tell you. But watch this space for details, and we'll announce something in the near future again to try and raise the profile of the need to vaccinate. So, Hugh, we're now going to pick on you, and we want you to tell us. Obviously, we're taking Beef Expo to Melton Mowbray Market on Saturday, the 30th of May. What can you tell us that probably some of our listeners and viewers don't know about Melton Mowbray Market?
Well, and Melton Mowbray as a whole, it is, as I'm sure you'll all be aware this week, British Pie Week, and we are hosting in town the British Pie Awards, where over 1,000 pies have been entered to find the champion pies of Britain. We're humble sponsors of the beef and wine category, and I've put my best man on the job today. He's come back with a couple of Rennies lighter, and Melton Mowbray is the rural capital of food, so it's fantastic that Beef Expo is coming here. I think for the first time. Is that correct, Neil?
Oh yeah, and it's a great site. We're very excited about it.
Yeah.
To date, you've been a great landlord. So far. So
You haven't seen the bill yet. No, so it's the rural capital of food. It's in the heart of England. You really have everyone available within the shortest distance you can possibly get to here. We're thrilled to be hosting. Not only is Melton the rural capital of food, but we're in the heart of it. So I think as a 1,000-plus-year-old livestock market, we're incredibly lucky to still be in the town centre, kind of almost having made our last move in 1869 from the mucky Victorian marketplace to the state-of-the-art proper building at the time when Smithfield Market and the like were all being built and the railways were coming to bring the Stockton to market and then to the consumers afterwards. We're still in that position and didn't have the move 20, 30 years ago out to beyond the ring road. So what you see when you come to Melton is the old-fashioned, the countryside comes to town every week, and they come with their agricultural goods and they exchange them in town. We've got a kind of farmers market and general market here as well. And it's that old-fashioned market buzz of people coming from one place to exchange what they've got for what people have got in the other place. And it really is, it's a community here that we have, and we're delighted to welcome you into it.
All right, so Hugh, Beef Expo is a fantastic opportunity for all of us to get together in the industry. As Neil says, we're pretty excited about what we've got in the way of sponsorship so far and people who've already booked their stands to come along and things we're going to show people when they get there. Also, it's going to be a party. That's my take on it. Anyway, so painting the town red, Hugh. We won't be the first people to be painting the town red in Melton Mowbray, will we? Do you want to tell us that little story?
You've been doing your research, haven't you, Ben? So, yes, and many people will have heard of painting the town red, and it's one of the things that originates in Melton Mowbray, not just the home of pork pies and Stilton cheese, but a right old knees up. And as the story goes, there was a local hunting party that had a bit too much, perhaps, from the Stirrup Cup and carried on into town all their revelries and thought it might be fun to get out some red paint and start daubing the buildings with their artwork, including the swan above one of the oldest buildings in the marketplace. And hence the term painting the town red and having a jolly old knees up originates in Melton Mowbray. We don't encourage such behaviour from participants at Beef Expo, but I might see you in Melton's one nightclub on one night while you're here, Ben.
Excellent. Thank you, Hugh. Well explained. 1837, I believe that event happened where they painted the town red. And yeah, so it's not only pork pies and cheese. Tell me about your cheeses.
So we're also, I have, one of my colleagues was doing the judging of the British Pie Awards today, but the week before Beef Expo's here, we're also hosting the Artisan Cheese Fair, which is a celebration of British and Irish cheeses. And during the week beforehand, I have the privilege of judging in the Artisan Cheese Awards. I won't tell you which class I'm judging because you'll get offended. But it's the best cheeses of Britain and Ireland come to Melton Mowbray in the rural capital of food to be judged, and you can sample them for yourselves in the weekend before Beef Expo.
One more thing while we're on gastronomy and we move back onto probably more cattle-related things. It's not just cheese and pork pies, is it? Within the bounds of your market, you must be the only market I've ever visited in the country. Within the bounds of your market, you have not only a smokehouse where they smoke wonderful meats. I've yet to sample any, but I understand from you they're pretty good. And what's the other thing, Hugh?
I believe you might be referring to the brewery, Ben.
I believe you might be right. You have a brewery within the market.
We do. So when I actually came here with my business partner 10 years ago, and we were interested in getting involved in livestock markets and thought Melton Mowbray was the perfect site in the middle of the country, we were also thrilled to discover that it had a farmers market and was located in the rural capital of food. And he said, I have a friend who has set up breweries all around the world, and we always said we would set up a brewery in the UK. He called him, got him to re-emigrate. Is that what you do when you come back home? Anyway, he came back from Australia, where he was running a brewery there, to set up a brewery in Melton Mowbray and in the heart of the market itself. And this is a guy who is a world-class brewer. It's not just a kind of a micro brewery. You've been able to get their stock in Waitrose and Sainsbury's and it's in a number of pubs around. And we're lucky that after a cattle sale on a Wednesday, the tap room's open and we can sit out in hopefully the sunshine and enjoy a glass while we discuss the week's trade.
It all sets the scene for quite a fun expo ahead, I think, business and pleasure.
You mix a bunch of happy farmers and a bunch of happy trade stand exhibitors and a brewery, then it might well be that the town could get into bed again. So anything.
I'm thinking of making a holiday of it.
Yeah, why not? I think we have we start the beef bash, can't we? We need a live band now. Ben plays the guitar.
Oh, watch this space with the live band. I'm very keen on the idea.
As you know, we have the stage as well if you need that, and a full music venue with stage and sound and bar.
Yeah, so Ben and I were in CattleCon in Nashville last day of January, first few days of February. So it gave us some ideas how you can add to an event by just putting a little bit of music in certain places. And I mean, they put a whole load of music in every place, but just a little bit of music in some places would add something special to an event. That's for sure. What's your ambitions for the market? Next steps, who do you want to wipe out, or who do you want to, it's obviously growth. We can hear the ambition, and obviously Ben and I and James, we've met you a few times. So, where do you want to be in 10 years' time? Where do you want to see Melton Mowbray Market?
Well, I certainly remember 10 years ago when I started and I spoke to some of the people at the Farmer's Guardian, and they said, Melton, does it have a market? Maybe. I mean, really, down that part of the country, all we've heard of is Newark. And whilst we don't want to see any markets disappear, really, they're an important part of the fabric of livestock in the country. It probably was true that two large markets couldn't coexist in this part of the country within 30 miles of each other. We're the ones still standing, thankfully, and we're growing from strength to strength. We've grown threefold in the last 5 years, and we are very definitely on the map. I think if you now asked Farmer's Guardian about Melton Mowbray, they'd have something different to say. Where do we want to go from that? I think, as I said before you started the recording in the intro, I'm a bit of a markets evangelist, and that trading method of bringing multiple buyers and sellers together in the same place at the same time with a regulated environment, trusted environment, where people know they can do business, they know they're going to get paid for their stock, they know if there's a problem with their stock, they've got comeback under the regs, and they've got a trusted intermediary who can help them navigate all that. It's the best way of doing business. Now, there's nothing wrong with trading direct and selling your animals direct if you've got the negotiating power with the deadweight buyers. But where do you get that negotiating power from? You get it from looking at the live market price, the published, reliable, trustworthy price, and negotiating on the back of that. They'll still have your pants down unless you're big enough and ugly enough to deal with them. But we're there providing that price for you to do that business. What needs to happen, I think what I always said when I came into this industry is, isn't it incredible that there are still over 100 livestock markets and almost as many operators of those livestock markets in this country? If you look at what's happened in different types of markets, where my background is, hey, there were 25 stock exchanges in the UK in the 1970s. There's now one, and it does half the trading in Europe and makes most of its money from North America. The economic logic will dictate to further consolidation in livestock markets. We want to be part of that. We believe we can be part of that. We believe that's a good thing as well, because it leads to more sustainable markets, stronger markets that are going to be there for generations to come. They can also stand up for themselves and their customers a bit better. Is it any wonder that the government listens to Tesco and Sainsbury's and the like, you look at their market capitalizations, you look at the number of people they employ, it's incredible that we have any voice at all. But thanks to the likes of you, Neil, and our trade association and their guys, we are at the top table and we sit there, but we need to be stronger.
Yeah.
We need to be stronger. So to me, it's about becoming a stronger, more sustainable, more important industry to serve our farming customers as best we can, because I think we all know as well what would happen if we weren't there. You would all be getting paid a lot less for your beef.
So
But on that exact point, sorry, Neil, but on that exact point, Hugh, and where you started 25 years ago this year, we saw foot and mouth across the UK. And I remember it well, and it was devastating. What we lost alongside in excess of 6 million animals that year was price discovery. There wasn't a place you could go like a market that set those values. And I know many of us in the cattle industry at the time felt we were having our pants pulled down because there was no other way to sell. If you're a market evangelical, I understand that. I am too. I would not do without markets in the UK, and I'm delighted that there are. I'm very lucky to have Tame not far down the road from me, but I also sometimes come and visit your market and bring some stock up there too, and I'm delighted that you're there.
And Hugh, what I was going to say was, so, and it's great you've got ambition, and you mentioned, roughly 100 markets, but livestock numbers are decreasing. So something at some point in the future, something's going to have to give.
Yes, fundamentally it will, and that is one of the drivers of consolidation, because there's fewer mouths that can be fed from fewer cattle about. But let's not forget, alongside that, those mouths are getting more expensive to feed. Those mouths are getting more expensive to water. Those mouths are getting more expensive to heat. Those mouths are paying more tax, and we're all going to suffer from the rates relief disappearing alongside a massive rates revaluation as well. These are all challenges that we have to deal with, and it's going to help drive that consolidation as well, because it's an economic necessity.
Yeah, and then my other point on the comments you made would be, and appreciate the positivity that we are at the top table, but I won't be alone in thinking we need a new government. We're dealing with a government at the moment that's got no interest in agriculture, no interest in, they talk great words that, food security is national security. Last week's rehash of SFI gives nothing to encourage food security in any way. Of course, we never give up the battle, and we'll keep knocking and kicking doors down. But our industry is under stress and pressure at the moment from our own government because they don't understand it and they don't engage enough. Hugh, I think I would like to say that they don't engage enough, and I think we can say that across the board. You don't have 15 U-turns in 19 months if you've engaged with all the relative parties before you make decisions. I think it's that simple. Sorry, James, you were going to say something.
No, I was actually going to say, when we're talking about market consolidation and the fact that we're getting fewer livestock numbers, when I was a kid and I used to come to Melton Market, Tuesday was the day. Everything, sheep, fur and feather, cattle, the lot. And obviously the growth of the market's got to the stage now where you can't even do it on one day. So you've got sheep on a Tuesday, we've got cattle on a Wednesday, and some days you'll go on a sheep day and there's sheep in the cattle pens, and it's absolutely madness. So yes, they've got market consolidation, and yes, there are fewer animals to go through the market, but Melton seems to be bringing them from all over the place in order to bolster, and they've got to that stage now. It's 2-day market.
Yes, I mean, it was something we introduced during COVID, actually, as a way of reducing the number of staff and customers on site at any one time. Also handily coincided with the disappearance of Newark Market, and so Wednesday was available. But those two things came together and we split the days, and actually they were, as you've noted, they were so successful that we wouldn't be able to go back to one day now. And volume is good, because not only does volume pay the bills, but it also ensures that if you're coming here to sell stock, there's a lot of buyers around to compete for your stock. So you might get the occasional grumble from a local person of, oh, you're more interested in getting someone from 100 miles away than you are from getting me 5 miles down the road. We're interested in you all. And actually, for you, the local person, you're benefiting from those people coming from 100 miles away because they're dragging the buyers here who are then paying more for your stock as well.
Yeah.
So on that, then give us a geographical spread, Hugh, because that's a really interesting point you raised there. Like I'm a couple hours away. James comes, he's on your doorstep and couldn't fall out of bed and land in the market. Where are you coming from? Where's the furthest reach that you see buyers or sellers coming from?
That's a very good question, Ben. And while you're asking it, I am just bringing up how's this going to work. It doesn't work very well for a podcast at all, does it? But you can all see, I hope, on your screens. That's where our sellers came from last year.
Well, we can see
and
nothing
the big
different.
sellers.
We can only, Hugh,
Oh,
we can only say you could be talking absolute bollocks here, and we can't defend it, aren't you?
okay. Let me try again. Is that good?
Something's
Oh,
happening.
look at that.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I didn't even know you
So-
could do this.
so
We've not had this
apologies.
before.
Oh, yeah.
Apologies to those only listening, but that's where our sellers came from last year.
And just
So it has been a
Wow.
huge part of what we've done is where we get people who want to come to us from. Now, they're choosing to travel to come to Melton because they want the market, because they quite like going back with a pork pie and some Stilton cheese, because they might have a pint in the brewery afterwards, because they enjoy the chat with their mates. I don't know if you saw a wonderful, again, the Livestock Auctioneers Association has been doing a great set of promotional videos these last few months on why you should get to market. And the last one they did a couple of weeks ago was actually on Melton, and come to the market for the community as well as everything else. You have a good time when you come to market. You meet your peers, you compare notes. It's great for your physical health, it's great for your mental health, it's great for your economic wealth.
and depending on what side of the ring you're on, it's not very good for your wallet. So
Well, willing buyer, willing seller. As someone said to me who used to present on markets for the stock exchange, and people would always ask him why are prices going up, and his standard answer, which I would give to people here, is more buyers than sellers.
Jonathan, what's your first experience of a market, and what market's closest to you, so we can give you a bit of banter on competition. Other markets are available.
So my closest livestock market is Newcastle Emlyn, which is a relatively small livestock market that's still in the middle of the town. They have multiple mart days there as well, and it's still kind of at the core of the community and the local kind of industry, really. One thing that fascinates me is when I've been to different marts around the country, quite often you'll see the same buyers stood around the ring. And it is intriguing to me that you've got a group of buyers traveling around the country to buy into this kind of local gathering of animals. Really, it is, as you've said, Hugh, it is an interesting example of how the vendors have retained a level of control over what's becoming increasingly consolidated buyers, really.
So to my shame, Charlotte, I'm having to Google Newcastle Emlyn.
It's in Wales, it's somewhere in
small.
Wales.
Well, I got
nowhere-
that bit.
They don't play football in the northeast. It's somewhere in Wales.
They play rugby.
Okay.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
an
proper
interesting one,
rugby.
Sinead, because there might be some buyers or the agents of those buyers who would be in Newcastle Emlyn and also Melton Mowbray on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And
Yeah.
it is a reasonably specialist job. Certainly the maths you see from the buyers where they've been sent in and they've been told to get 40 head at not more than
Yeah.
pence per kilo dead weight. They're having to look at those animals coming off the scales, go, right, okay, well, how much is that going to way on the hook. What's my dead weight price? Right, I've got to convert that back into a live weight price in real time against competition as it's moving. I'm in awe of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see that change as well. So we've all seen the online sales, especially for the pedigree animals. We had one just at the weekend where we had buyers from Hampshire to Scotland for a relatively small selection of Lincoln Reds and other native breeds. The technology enables you to take part from distance at low cost. It hasn't really gone into the commercials properly yet, but it has an island where they had different rules in COVID. And you'll see there will be a shock that comes, be that massively aggressive Bluetongue, be that something to do with TB, be that, God forbid, foot and mouth coming back, or just a terrible winter where people can't travel in the same way. And suddenly the technology that is there will start to be used more.
So you see that technology as a positive for the future sustainability of markets?
It has to be, because in the context of everything getting more expensive, if I as a buyer ultimately can cover half a dozen markets at the same time from my desk, even though I might lose an edge of a penny a kilo here or there, when you compare that to the cost of me being at each and every individual market, as long as I've got my haulage sorted out, then yeah, it's going to happen. The idea that it's not going to happen when it's happened in every single marketplace elsewhere, why would it not happen here? And you look at something like antique markets now, and they're similarly sort of unique goods around, and the room and the internet coexist perfectly well.
It's interesting how, you're not seeing a wholesale shift towards online trading. That kind of human element of it's still really important as part of it.
Interestingly, if you speak to someone like British Car Auctions about their experience, they had the technology many years before the shift occurred, and it was one of those things. It was a terrible winter that drove the actual big shift into adoption of the technology. And who knows what it will be here, but there will be something that will come that will make that shift happen.
And so this leans back into something you said before, I think, Hugh, about consolidation. We've seen massive consolidation in the veterinary sector, largely funded by venture capital over the last 10, 12 years or so. And I think there is a view that has not always been to the benefit of the customers. So are you, with the increase in technology, and you also mentioned earlier on about there will be some consolidation in the industry, some markets will go, there'll be less numbers about. Do you foresee that consolidation coming alongside the technology, and do you foresee it coming quite soon?
They all enable each other, right? I think when we talked about the declining herd, the increased cost of everything, the increased availability and lower cost and of the technology, they all point in the same direction. How and when it actually happens and what are the factors that tip them, we don't know. The question you asked about consolidation in vets being bad for industry, I don't think too many market operators is good for the industry or for farmers, because you end up having a bunch of struggling businesses and people who are kind of cutting corners to compete, perhaps. And let's face it, whilst everyone always needs a vet, and if you have consolidation in vets, you are reducing choice. The real competition to Melton Mowbray Market is not Bakewell or Carlisle or Exeter. It's the direct trade, or it's overseas trade. There are plenty of, if there were only one market operator, there'd still be choice in how you trade your business. But if we persist in having too many market operators, you may lose the choice of having a market.
That is punchy, isn't it? And I just want to come back on, I didn't say it was bad for farmers, the consolidation of vets. I said there are folks who said that's not always entirely positive. My own experience of working with consolidation and vet, well, the consolidated vet group is entirely positive. The things that they say that they can do, I actually agree with them. They have more staff on. We never have to worry about getting a call out. They have better diagnostics. They have teams of specialists. You know, there are good things that come with this as well. But you know, we've seen it in the press recently about, particularly in pets, the consolidated vets charging just an enormous amount of money for very simple non-procedures.
Perhaps, Ben, there's a theme there for a podcast on vet consolidation discussion, and we'll get two different parties in. And Shona, you can referee that one, perhaps. So
I would like that.
yeah.
So apologies for misunderstanding you then there, Ben, but I
Not
guess
a
then
misunderstanding.
you would see all the benefits of that consolidation that you've talked about, but you still wouldn't lose choice because there'd still be plenty of choices as how to market your stock. Hey, can always use Facebook, can't you?
So actually, something I was interested in asking you, Hugh. Obviously, we've seen the rise in the likes of integrated schemes. Has that really knocked your calf sales? Because are you having less calves through the market? Is that something that you're noticing?
In brief, not really. So our calf numbers growing have been part of the threefold increase we've seen in the last 5 years. Easy to challenge, yes. It takes stock away from the market system. Are all the false welfare requirements of number of market movements things that take stuff out of the market system? Yes. Is there a need that's being addressed by those integrated systems there? Yes, as well. And, you know, what I look at is what's the need that's being addressed there that we're not addressing. And for your classic buyer, I can buy this calf, I can rear this calf, I know roughly how long it's going to take me and how long it's going to cost, but I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to get paid for it at the end, because the market price will be the market price. Now, if someone can get me into an integrated bed and breakfast contract where I know I'm going to be paid £1 a day, £1.50 a day, whatever the number is, to take each calf on, and it's going to cost me a percentage less than that, then I know my costs, I know my revenues, I can plan and run a business, hopefully profitable. So what does that make me think? If we can, in future, as a slightly more consolidated industry, provide our own forward contracts, indeed market forward contracts, and you can do this in North America now, where you can go and buy your calves or your stores, and at the same time you buy them, you agree what price you're going to sell them for in 6 months or a year's time, then you've got that certainty again. But not only have you got that certainty, you've got that certainty in a competitive multilateral contract where there's multiple people competing for your business. And the concern I have with some of those integrated systems is who's in control, who's actually making the money out of it, who's taking the risk, who's doing the work. And you tend to find that the benefit is loaded in the end customer, well, not the consumer, but the end retailer, let's say, or their agents. So do I see there's a need there fulfilling? Absolutely. Do I want to fulfill that need in time in a better way myself? Yes.
So with that in mind then, Hugh, is that contract, would that be the case that when you get to the end, you've got your set price, but it also goes to market, so that's a base price, but you could get more coming through the markets?
Yes, you effectively have a futures contract, and the futures contract to deliver, we are talking, let's be clear, about something that doesn't exist yet, and I am not about to roll out a Beef Expo. It's some way downstream, but it is a need that can and should be addressed. There's a market price today for cattle in next July, fat cattle in next July, and that market price is X, and it's based on what we all know now, what we think about the demand is now, and there's a price bid for it, and customers either take that price or not, or run the risk. Now, stuff changes between now and July, and yes, the market that futures price goes up or down. But if I've locked into it in March, then I'm locked into it, and that's the price I will get. Now, what that needs is a much, much more robust and effective risk management and settlement system than we've got today in livestock markets, in the feed industry as a whole. And you are talking back to some of my past life in financial markets and the risk management you have there. I mean, we're in a bonkers industry at the moment where you can buy £100,000 worth of cattle. There'll be someone today who's done it, who's driven off with those cattle from my market and said, I'll pay you in a couple of weeks. That's madness. But it's the way it's worked for centuries, and you're not going to change that in a couple of years. But is that one of the things that needs to change to ensure that we have food security in this country and sustainability in this country? Absolutely, because when people go bust, it's not just them that goes bust, it has repercussions. It knocks out other people, it ripples down the chain. And I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes going, what would happen if this incredibly big person went bust? Who would get affected in the chain? And I don't think the British food industry is robust enough, because it's low margin, it's undercapitalized, and it lives on credit.
And
Yeah,
So are you an unwilling banker?
I think all livestock markets are unwilling bankers at the moment, yes.
I was going to say, rightly or wrongly, I think we are still probably the only industry that will do a deal on a handshake. And you guys are at the blunt end of that.
Absolutely. And look, I would never want to take away the trust-based element of livestock markets, that people can come here and know that it is a trusted place to do business, where they will get paid, where disputes will get dealt with. But the bit that does need to change over time is the lack of certainty over payment to us. And it's our job, and I think it's partly going back to there needs to be consolidation happening in the industry, because at the moment, yeah, I say, these are the rules, this is how you've got to behave here, and we do tighten and we do tighten and we do tighten. But if you turn the screw too much on people at the moment, they go, well, I can go to Newcastle Emlyn and they're not like that. I'm not saying Newcastle Emlyn are not like that. I'm just picking on Newcastle Emlyn because you mentioned it, Sinead.
yeah, but Hugh, just go back on the things that keep you awake at night. So this person that may go bust, is it a factor of our? You've kind of alluded to this a little bit. So our food production system is fractured, and whilst that guy going bust might be big in your eyes, he's probably not big in the UK picture. And when he drops out, there's someone else waiting on the sides, or two people waiting on the sides to pick up the.
So, two questions. I think in answer to your first one, just because it's always been the case that when someone's gone bust in the past, the ripple effect has been contained, there is no guarantee that that ripple effect will be contained in the future. So, there are not necessarily my direct customers at all, but there are some very, very big players in the food industry. And if we believe that it is largely low margin, undercapitalized and living on credit, then the ripple effect from someone big going bust could ripple through dramatically. What was the closest example we saw to that was actually the entry to COVID, when the UK hospitality sector closed. All of my buyers who sold into the hospitality chain weren't getting paid. They were just stopped dead. And so we had the ripple effect of that, which was contained, but saw a number of people go bust, because a whole industry just stopped. Whether they were getting support on one end or not, it just stopped payments happening for several weeks, if not months. And that was a tough time for us, because at the same time as that happening, we had Newark disappearing, so we had extra business coming in, which needed to be funded, and customers who owed us money who weren't paying us because they weren't getting paid, and we got through that. We're a lot stronger now as a result. We've been in a lot better position to deal with that kind of thing. But imagine it was 10 times bigger. And yeah, it's always very easy to say the system copes until it doesn't. And if we have an undercapitalized, low margin, credit binging industry, I don't think that's incredibly healthy. And I'm devoting a lot of my time and energy to making sure that my market and our industry is more insulated from that.
£8 a kilo at the start of January 27. You fully agree with that?
Sorry, that was the second question, wasn't it? I mean, you're going back into butter mountains, aren't you, a little bit there, Neil, with guaranteed minimum prices for commodities. And great, if we can all agree there's a minimum price there, then it helps. But I think in general, that doesn't happen anymore, does it?
No. So, and I'm going to poke a bit of fun at you here. So when you would say commodities, you're getting cattle and sheep mixed up. So sheep are the commodity, and cattle are probably not. So what do we get? What do we need to generate investment in the industry to make people grow the national herd? Because we need encouragement. And we launched a project in Scotland last week, which will be unraveling in the rest of the UK later this year, called Cows in the Communities, just trying to basically grow the suckler herd. And there are various benefits out there for some people producing suckler beef, but there's nothing out there that benefits someone that increases their herd yet. Now, there is a good price at the moment. Everyone will say it's not as good as it was this time last year. It's not, but it's still, nearly twice what it was as we went into COVID. And perhaps a minimum price would give everyone stability, retailers, processors, everyone. And, the peaks let's say the peaks of demand through the summer, through barbecue weather, could lift it if it needed to be lifted.
What is clear is that level of price support, I don't think, is coming back to Western UK markets, but there needs to be support, absolutely, for farming in this country. All developed economies subsidize agriculture, and this idea that we can come out of the EU and suddenly not have or have dramatically less farming support and still have this green and pleasant land and all that goes with it that the farmers deliver is wrong. I've probably mentioned to you and Ben before that two of the countries that have the highest agricultural subsidies in the world are Iceland and Switzerland. And what's interesting about Iceland and Switzerland? Well, they border the biggest marketplace in the world with some of the strongest agricultural protection in the world, and they haven't tried to build Singapore on Arctic or Singapore on Zay. They've said, right, we need massive agricultural subsidies to support our farming ambitions on the doorstep of an agricultural behemoth.
Yeah, and you try and send beef into Switzerland, by the way. That's not an easy challenge for they're very
I can imagine.
Yeah, very protective of their own industry. You touched on something there very relevant, and we did leave the EU. I think we've left the EU, or we might be going back into the EU. But at that point, the Conservative government decided that to move towards more environmental-based schemes for agricultural support. And in fairness, the EU had already alluded that they were going to do that too. For me, the key difference now is the new CAP agreement in the EU has stepped away from environmental support to about 50% BPS type payment, and then the rest on food production. And we're still dangling about trying to make sure, and I'm not against the birds and the bees and the butterflies, but we're still too environmentally focused and not enough yet on food production focus. At a time when even before what happened last weekend, another war in the world. We already had the situation in Ukraine. We hear all this talk about the extra 20, 30, 40 billion we need to invest in defense spending to make sure we're safe. If we're not careful, we'll have an army that we can't feed. And we really need to take things seriously. And I'm sorry, and I've gone off on a bit of a rant here, but this current government, they just don't have a clue. And the sooner we get a change, whatever level it is, the better. But we are being restricted in what we can do. And food production is scaling back across all categories, not just beef production. Sorry, rant over.
I mean,
It's good, right?
I'm going to steer clear of politics, or more, perhaps more bit of a plague on all their houses, because yeah, it was the previous government that took us out. It was the previous government that signed a lot of the free trade deals, and I think I mentioned to you, Neil, Meat and Livestock Australia, their London office was here in full power at the British Pie Awards. And why were they at the British Pie Awards? Well, they want to ingratiate themselves with the users of meat in Britain and say, hey, we can bring you Australian beef or other meats which are available, I understand, into your pies.
Yeah, and so the trade deals, and I'm always careful with this because I think we're not self-sufficient. We lost 50,000 tons of production last year, similar projected this year. To keep our beef eating consumers, we need to get it from somewhere. If it comes from Australia, it comes from Australia. But what those tariff-free trade deals with the tonnage, caps that they have are scary. But unless we encourage it to be produced here, the reality is that we're going to need more. I was challenged at an open meeting last week when someone says, what are you doing about all the beef that's being imported? And my answer to them or retort was, what are you doing? Because if you produce more, the market for imports will be less. And the more we can produce of our own, the less influence we will have from imported price. Because it's a small tonnage at the moment from all the people that export or we import from. But the more that increases and the more there is on retailer shelves that's £2 a kilo cheaper on ours, the more that sales area will be driven and the harder our industry will become. Sorry, that was another rant. It seems to be one of those days.
Right. If that rant is over, I'm not going to rant, but I am going to poke a question that I've just find curious. And that is, I used to enjoy flicking through the back of the Farmers Weekly, looking at all the market prices up and down the country.
Oof, oof, oof.
Now, I can look on, I've just got AHDB's website up here and I'm looking at dead weight prices. But those market prices, that seem to be the best possible free advertising for markets that there could be. Now, I can't find those anymore. I understand if I chose to pay for it, it would come along. But is it really worth it to the markets to have a few quid for getting paid for that data rather than using it as this wonderful blanket advertising campaign that markets are better? Where's it gone? And when's it coming back? And yes, I am grumpy.
It's not gone anywhere, Ben. And as a user of the markets who helps contribute to that price formation, you can get access to that data for free in a much more real-time basis than you do looking at a weekly newspaper by going onto the LAA's website. And if you put in that you are a customer of Melton Mowbray Market, or other markets are available, we will periodically get asked to verify that, but you will get access to that data for free. And actually that data presented in a better way than it was before. And yeah, I'll hold my hands up. Actually, I was one of the leading chargers on changing the way we did that, because at the moment, well, let's put it like this: it costs everything that I do in terms of opening my gates, paying all the drovers, cleaning up, cleaning out, welcoming you, welcoming the animals, bring those animals in, bring them out, paying the auctioneers, paying the office staff, it costs all of that to produce that market price. That market price is not free. But hitherto, the only person who's paid for it is you in your commissions. And yet anyone else in the old HDB model, where it was freely available online to anyone, they could take that price that you'd paid for and use it to do bilateral trades. No. All trading is available, all methods of trading should be available. But if someone is using my product that you've paid for that's cost a lot of money to produce and not paying a penny for it, not contributing to that price formation in any way, then do I think they should pay a bit for it? Absolutely.
Right. See, here's where we're going to diverge a little bit in our opinions, I reckon. So
Go on.
your example of a certain person who might be using it for bilateral trades, they're going to get that data anyway, because they're going to be able to, because they're going to be able to, they'll get it from a customer who isn't a customer or whatever. My point is, this was your advertising. This was your shop front. It was everywhere. We could see that. This has come to markets because this is what you'll get. And now you tell me I can go on the LAA and go and get it. Yes, but I'm not. That's the point. And before I was, because it was in my face. And now I've got to go and look for it, and I'm not. And I just feel that the markets are have lost a trick here because of this shop window that is now behind a paywall.
The Farmers Weekly believe that you as a reader don't value it. The Farmers Guardian believe that you as a reader do value it.
At this point in time, it'd be good to point out that our media partners for Beef Expo are the Farmers Weekly, just to remind them.
Yeah, but it's a commercial choice, right? If it's important enough to you as a reader, you should go onto the comments page and say, hey, why aren't you doing this? You used to do it. You don't anymore. Why not? You valued it. So it's one of the reasons you pay the cover price of the magazine. And I'd love them to take it again. They've decided that you don't need it enough.
Oh, there's nothing like passing the buck, is there, Hugh?
So
It's interesting, again, going back into my old world, the London Stock Exchange made broadly, in my day, a third of its money from trading, a third of its money from clearing and settlement, and a third of its money from data. It now actually makes a lot more of its money from data. And competition came along, and they said, "Oh, we can do what the London Stock Exchange does, cheaper, quicker, smarter. And why would we not advertise our prices? We're giving out our prices for free." They did that for a couple of years, and then they started charging for it. It's a piece I charge, and hey, I'm not getting paid a penny for my data. Let's just be clear about this. It's not some massive gravy train. What it does is it probably marginally reduces the cost of my subs to the LAA, but I still have to pay for my trade membership. It's just a little bit of income they get on the side. But if I can balance my charging, it means I don't have to charge you the amount extra that I ought to cover all of these additional costs that I have that are increasing all the time. And I'm charging those people who value the data. And there are people for whom this is going to become more important, and we can provide, or the LAA can provide it to them in better and smarter ways now that they can use in their systems and do their business better. And things like, hey, probably a topic for another session, but what's the benchmark price for cattle? You know, I can put out my various different weights and what they averaged this week. You can look at that and see what they averaged across all the markets in England and Wales. But that other livestock that we're not allowed to mention, there's an SQQ benchmark price. I think there should be a cattle benchmark price, and we should work together on developing one so that you know, your customers know what the benchmark animal costs, and we all agree on what that benchmark is. And then you start to see that these agencies like, or what they called Mintech as was, would provide to retailers, here's the cost of beef, here's the cost of flour, here's the cost of raising agent, therefore here are the ingredients in your beef burger, and your beef burger should cost this amount. But if the price of flour goes up, it's going to cost a bit more. So everyone, retailers and suppliers, are using these tools and these benchmarks to know when they need to go to their customers and say, I'm sorry, the price of goods have gone up. You'll see, here's the data from recognized industry standards. You're going to have to pay a bit more for your beef burger. But also the retailers can go, see, the price of flour has gone down. and you're still charging me the same for my ready-made beef burger. I need a discount on that. This is what's going on in businesses all around. And actually, what we can do as an industry by agreeing benchmarks, providing data in the right way to more people, we can help them do business.
So, Hugh, on your SQQC, and you didn't mention the word sheep, but I will, because that's what you're referring to. So, is it not the
Yeah.
case that so the beef sector's heavily influenced by dairy sector in the UK, and there is a difference, a small difference in some areas, perhaps a bigger difference in some, but whatever, there is a difference, and that would be harder to get that average across the board for that weight, just because there is that little difference, probably more difference between suckler beef and dairy beef than there is within sheep 1 and sheep 2. I don't know. I'm just saying that might be the problem.
And maybe you end up with more than one benchmark. But what I think would be useful for the industry as a whole and a lot of the users in that industry is to be able to talk about benchmarks.
So, folks, I think we're sort of coming to the end. Hugh, I've got one comical question to ask you, and we won't edit this, but we will hold you to your answer. So, I heard in a grapevine in the lead up to Beef Expo, Melton Mowbray, all NBA members were getting commission at half rate. Is that true, or is that just a rumor?
You can always talk to me or your auctioneer about volume that you're bringing and value that you're bringing, what we can do with each other to help each other. But I think what I would say is whenever anyone comes to me and says, look at that, you're making way too much money, you're charging far too much commission, we tend to be sat round a table and chairs like we're all virtually, apart from you, Shonit, sat round at the moment. And I say, well, if we were selling these at auction, not only would you be paying about 25% plus VAT on the way in, but I'd be paying about 25% plus VAT on the way out. And these tables and chairs, they don't need watering, cleaning up after, they don't die on you, and all that kind of stuff. So actually what the livestock markets offer livestock farmers is incredibly good value at less than a tenth of that price for selling something that's a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, so that wasn't really a yes or a no, but we'll take your answer anyway. And I'll take the point that you don't charge a buyer's premium on livestock and other products too. So I think unless anyone's got any final points they'd like to make, it's great to see everyone again. Hugh, thank you very much for your contribution. I think this is going to make a very exciting podcast episode. One, just going back to the beginning and the Bluetongue stuff, just bear that in mind. Underreported disease with similar symptoms to foot and mouth. Foot and mouth is currently in Cyprus. Cyprus have had other challenges since they got foot and mouth, of course, but it is very relevant to keep an eye on your livestock at all times, but especially if we're concerned about disease. This was episode 5, I think, so keep an eye out for Stakeholders Podcast episode 6, which will be out very soon. Thanks all. Thanks very much for your contributions.